The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising and marketing. Welcome back to our brand side segment where we're interviewing the best of the best on the marketing side of the business, people working for a specific brand. This is really helpful for those looking to break into marketing or to get that next promotion, and super beneficial for the agency professionals looking to see what it's like on the other side. In this episode, I interview Amit Singh. He's the Senior Director of Global Brand Partnerships at Adobe. So he's sharing his insights at Adobe, where he leads partnerships essentially to enhance the brand's reach and relevance through collaborations with major organizations like Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, and more. I'll talk about this episode and how the importance of authentic brand partnerships should add value to consumers' lives, and talks about Adobe's dual focus on empowering creatives and supporting enterprise solutions. So we'll talk about his career journey, from starting an agency life at McCann Erickson to roles at iconic brands like American Express, Nintendo, Starbucks, and his stint at Goodby, Silverstein and Partners. And he talks about the importance of creating emotional connections in marketing. So I think you're really going to love this episode, whether on the agency side or you're on the marketing side. There's a lot to learn. And plus, who doesn't love hearing about Adobe? One of the best products out there. You're probably using Adobe. We use Adobe. So we hope you enjoy. If you want to connect with Amit or any of our past guests, please reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on LinkedIn. Engage with us, and we will help you. It's how we're able to get guests like Amit on the show. We hope you like it. Now on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast, and as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. Alrighty. Amit Singh, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. How the heck are you doing today, sir?
Doing well, Gino. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate the opportunity, and glad to be part of this.
Got it. And you are the Senior Director of Global Brand Partnerships at Adobe. So would this be our Brandside segment? I think so.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, absolutely. So my experience has been in brand marketing and advertising, been at Adobe now for about 9 years. And currently I lead the brand partnerships team at Adobe. So it's been a nice, interesting journey.
Okay, then I got to do the intro. Amit Singh, welcome to the Breaking Entering Brandside podcast.
Appreciate that, Gino. And glad again. Like I said, before to be a part of it. So
okay. Thank you. So I'm pumped to talk with you about Adobe Global Brand Partnerships. I know we want to talk more of a high level of what you're doing at Adobe. We'll definitely kick it back because I'm looking at your LinkedIn and you have an amazing, amazing career. I see agencies, I see big, amazing brands, managing advertising, director of global advertising at some amazing brands here. We'll learn how you broke in. I'm sure we're going to learn a little bit about agency side versus client side and what's the difference if you miss one or the other. But yeah, I think we can just start off really, really high level. What are you up to today? Can you tell us about your role as Senior Director for Global Brand Partnerships at Adobe, which is like the perfect advertising tool? Like everybody that isn't a creative in advertising should know how to use Adobe. I preach it to students all the time. Like, this is the product.
It absolutely is. I feel very privileged to be here. Adobe is obviously not just a creative company, but a company that's enabled creativity across the world for so long. And for me, right now, it's just a dream gig, frankly. And so what I do is I lead the partnerships team at Adobe. Our job is to build reach and relevance for the Adobe brand, for our products, for our categories, across the different sets of areas that we focus on. So whether it's sports marketing, brand partnerships, we help our strategic partnership teams sort of leverage the full value of their marketing, and also supporting our brand purpose and CSR teams. So a really dream job for me to be at right now, and a culmination of a number of years of focusing on brand marketing and advertising. And Adobe is just a great brand to be a part of.
Totally. We need to create a segment that's like breaking, entering into brand partnerships, because a lot of our listeners now are very curious about this ecosystem and they want to get involved in it. So just really high level, like how would you define brand partnerships today, and like what you in the ecosystem in general? Like what is the purpose? Like how can you get good at it? What are some of the skills to break into it? Just starting there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the fundamental thing that's really important for brand partnerships is really understanding what value you can add to your audience's life because of the partnership. It's not about slapping a logo. It's not just about saying sponsored by, but how are you adding value to the things they're already passionate about by joining forces with another brand, another IP, working with talent, etc. So that's the fundamental thing that my team and I always look at. Okay, how are we going to really enhance the people's attention spans, really make sure we are leveraging the things they're already passionate about and showing up in a way that's really adding value to. In terms of breaking into partnerships, I'll be honest, I really was very much focused on brand marketing and advertising. And when I started working on partnerships a few years ago, a sort of a light bulb went off. Like, this is such a great way for us to showcase our brand, but also be in a space that's very authentic, especially to Adobe from a creativity standpoint. And so that's something that I was very passionate about. Luckily, I had the support of leadership and the brand team to allow me to focus on that. And that's where I ended up today. And so leading the brand partnerships team across the wide spectrum of things that we do is really rewarding.
Totally. And how would you define the Adobe brand today, where it stands? Because I can tell you that I thought immediately of the same kind of intro that you had, that it is a creative brand, but it enables creativity as a tool, as a resource for, I think about the advertising industry, that's all I talk about, mainly for right. Advertising creators and people that are interested in design and they have these projects. This is the tool that enables creativity. How are you guys talking about the brand internally, and how do you want to externally communicate that brand?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's about creativity. We do have, a duality to our business. We also support enterprises and corporations who are, looking at leveraging marketing and making it more efficient and making sure that they understand their customers better. So it's a duality of that role. It's all the great creative tools that we know and love, but it's also helping folks reach their audiences in a much more efficient manner and making sure that they're understanding their customers better. So our brand really has that ability to flex across the users who are using our tools to create all the greatest creative elements that you're seeing out there in the world, to also enterprises and companies who want to make sure that their marketing teams have the latest tools, but also ability to understand the customer journey and engage better with customers in that way as well.
Makes sense. Got it. And then the exercise, I would imagine, would go, okay, so we know who we are and we know who our audience is. And then, who do we work with? Whether it's brands or other organizations to partner up that's also fulfilling that same strategic vision. It might be hitting new audiences. Is this correct? Could this be influencers as well, or is that a different sector?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's all of those. So I think for us, it's about partnering with brands that we want to be seen in the company of, and making sure that we are looking at what audiences we are trying to reach. Where does our brand play an authentic role, and how can we make sure that whatever we do with a partner really helps uplift our brand, but also is adding value to the audience's day-to-day journey and passions. And you hear me say that a lot, adding value, because it's really important for us to play a role of enhancing what they're already doing, but also showcasing the reach and relevance of our brand. So whether we are partnering with MLB, whether we are partnering with, we've done a number of partnerships with a lot of the video streaming platforms, whether it's Amazon Prime Video, Disney Plus, Apple TV Plus. So I think we show up in the company of brands that are reaching a similar audience that we want to reach as well.
Who you guys are, the global brand recognition. You've been around for so long. You're the best in your sector. I feel like there's so many different partnerships that you can engage in, and filtering that. Is that what your team does? Tell me about the dynamics of your team. Is it, are they constantly scanning microcultures in different communities to see who these influencers are, these up and coming startups? How do you navigate all the options of brands out there.
Yeah, I think one of the advantages of being at a brand like Adobe is that, we have brands who want to partner with us. So that's a good thing.
Yes. People are probably always reaching out. You get a lot of inbound, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's great. But we always want to make sure that we're linking back to our strategic needs. And those needs could be through the lens of the product, through the lens of our bigger categories, what we're trying to achieve as a brand. And so there's a variety of different filters that we use to make sure we're reaching the right audience, the right timing. But basically the biggest filter is, from a brand perspective, is this a match? Would we be, working together in a way that is helpful to both brands and not really just showing up as slapping our logo on something? Because that's not really adding value to our customers' lives.
Got it. Well, then tell me a little bit more about Adobe holistically. Like, do you love working there? Is there an in-house creative agency? Like, can you give us a little bit of a look in the inside?
I like I said, I'm just so proud and privileged to be a part of this brand. It's, one of the greatest brands in the world. And when you think about things that are made using Adobe's products, it just covers the entire spectrum of creativity. So really proud to be here. We have incredibly creative teams in-house that also help us out, but we also work with external agency partners. And frankly, I think for me, when I look at my career and the brands that I've been fortunate to be a part of, Adobe is right up there. And it's just a brand that is at the pinnacle of its game right now.
Got it. Well, thank you for sharing. Then let's kick it back, shall we? You said you worked on some amazing brands. I alluded to it before, but let's kick it back. At what point in your life did you think to yourself, I want to get into advertising in this marketing world where I'm making ads and talking to people I don't know for a living?
Yeah.
Where were you? What were you wearing? What was the smell in the air? Was there a light bulb moment?
There was, so this is going to sound really weird, but I was an advertising geek as a kid growing up.
There we go.
Loved watching ads. I was the guy who, and I'm going to date myself here, who would record ads on a VCR. I would record them when they were showing up so I could watch them again and again afterwards. I was the kid who could not wait for the world's greatest ads or the world's funniest ads to show up on TV so I could watch those again and again. And the thing that really attracted me to advertising was how great advertising made me feel. The emotion, whether it's humor, whether it's, sadness, whether it's music, or the way vision and music was brought together, the way stories were told. I just loved it all. So when I was in my teen years, I was like, okay, this is great. This is what I want to do. I want to make ads because this feels just exactly the right way to go about life. My father worked for Nestle. And so I grew up in an environment that was surrounded by corporate marketing and brand marketing. And so that added another layer to it. But frankly, even as a kid, I just loved advertising.
Gotcha.
So,
isn't that weird though? Because there's like movies that do the same thing, TV shows that do the same thing. There's music and like art.
Yeah.
But we are in this, for some reason, these ads spoke to us.
I think it's all about emotion. And that's something that sometimes people forget, is that you are ultimately marketing to and speaking to fellow human beings. And nothing moves us more than feeling something, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. But that's emotion drives action. And I think that's something that really spoke to me when I was watching ads on TV. And there's a lot of video ads back then, right? So for me, it was about, wow, I felt sort of transported to the story that was being told in 30 seconds.
Right. The fast form there. And now it's like 6 seconds today, it seems like.
You can get 6 seconds of attention. That's amazing.
Yeah. There's different ways now. But okay, so you fell in love early. And then tell me, where did you go to school? What did you study, to achieve this mission to break into advertising?
Yeah, so I studied in Australia. My family was living in Australia, so I went to school at University of Melbourne. And I went to school, said, okay, I'm going to study economics because I couldn't really figure out what else to do to get into business and marketing. In Australia in those days, you could not specialize in something as specific as marketing in your undergrad. You had to do more of a generalist course. I still remember I did my first economics lesson day one of university, and I'm like, this is not for me. I can't study economics. Like, that's not going to work out. So I quickly went, saw my advisor, transitioned to business. And so I studied business for the duration of my undergrad career. But, what happened in the middle of it was my parents moved back to India, where they were from originally. And I went to see them during my summer break in Australia. So I had like 2.5 months off. And a family friend of ours happened to be the CEO of McCann Erickson, the advertising agency. And I was like, I don't want to think I want to just spend 2 months doing nothing. So he's like, well, why don't you just come intern at McCann Erickson and you can run around the shop and do a few things. So, I got in, I interned there for 2 months, and I just fell in love with the process of how advertising's created. And McCann Erickson and their headquarters in New Delhi had different teams on different floors of this building that they had. So there was one floor was all accounts, one floor was all strategy, one floor was all creatives, one floor was all production, and so on. And basically I spent a week and a half on each floor.
Oh,
learning
nice.
how advertising agencies work. And I did everything, right? I made photocopies. I ran decks up and down. This is internet. So there wasn't any SharePoint or anything like that. So I was doing a lot of the grunt work. But what that let me do was sit in and just listen in to how they were thinking about getting new clients, pitching to clients. They had Coca-Cola at that point, so a huge client. And they were pitching to a lot of the new companies that were entering India at that stage. This is where India was opening up as a capitalist society. So just a fascinating internship for me. And I was hooked. I was sold. I was like, okay, this is it. This is what I want to do. And I want to be part of this journey.
Love that. Did you have a anticipated role? Of all those floors, which one did you see yourself sitting on?
I honestly love the account side of things. I felt like that was the one role that could see all other roles come together. Mm-hmm. And I love the ability to speak directly to the clients.
Yeah.
And I was watching these folks who, I'm 20 at this stage, right? So I'm really young. Right. And all these folks who've been in advertising for as long as I've been alive, just doing amazing stuff. And I think, okay, this is something where I can play a role and I can hopefully be successful at.
Gotcha. So you go back to school, you finish up, you're studying business, probably learning like marketing strategy, the fundamentals of like a little bit of entrepreneurship, maybe some generally accepted accounting principles. I hope not. And you graduate. What happens next?
Nothing like planned. So okay. Everything blows up. So I graduate and I actually moved to the States. I was born here. So I was like, okay, I've got an American passport. I'm going to go to the States and try and find a job there in advertising, right? Things very simple. Packed up from Australia, moved over to the States with one suitcase and could not get a job in advertising. So I moved up to Seattle because I thought, hey, Microsoft's big. All these big companies are there. There's got to be advertising there. And I also had a place to crash at. So I'm like, okay, I'll move to Seattle. I've got no money. I've got one suitcase. Let's do that. What ended up happening was I got a job as a person who was selling, computer training classes online. So this is Microsoft Office Suite, all of the different classes. Like you can take a class for PowerPoint and mm-hmm. Excel and Word and all of those. Absolutely hated that job. Hated it. It is cold calling all day long. You were given a list of 80 names to call. And if you're lucky, you might get 3 or 4 to accept. Your goal was to get 5 to accept. And you were completely on commission. So it was not fun at all to not succeed. And I was thinking, okay, I'm doing sales. Sales can go into marketing. Marketing hopefully can get me into advertising. So I was trying to plan all this out, but it was not working out. So I packed up my bags. I moved down to the Bay Area because it was, seemed like the place to be. And the only advertising quote unquote job that I could find was selling this new thing called online advertising and banners. This is back in the very late 90s. And shout out to Simon Whitcomb, who's now at Meta, who gave me my first real break in advertising as a sales guy. And I came out to work for IGN, which is a big gaming website, and sold advertising there.
So you got into ad sales.
I did. So I got advertising in my job title at least.
Got it. Yeah. At IGN. Got it. And what were some of those big lessons there? I mean, were you still hungry for that agency experience, or were you comfortable on the brand side and the ad sales side of things and the Would you say that's publisher side?
Yeah, it was the publisher side. So
Yeah.
I was on the sales team for the publisher side.
So
So
yeah.
doing advertising on the website. Yeah. The great thing about this role was that it exposed me to both brands and agencies.
Right.
So I was talking to brands directly, but I was also talking to agencies, media agencies, the advertising agencies. And so it started to really expand my understanding of the end-to-end journey that an ad makes from being sort of briefed in to appearing on a website, right? And so that was really, really helpful for me. And I spent almost 3 years at IGN, but that really opened up my eyes to this ecosystem that exists between agencies, publishers, brands that really gets advertising out there. And that was the biggest sort of learning experience for me at that stage. I knew I did not want to be in sales forever. And I knew I did not want to get typecast as a salesperson, but I did learn so much about how advertising actually functions and works, decisions about where to spend money and all of those things that I hadn't been exposed to before that.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious about ad sales on the publisher side. Obviously, as a media company, like I got to learn how to do that. But I think that's an interesting route. I'm sure it's pretty lucrative, I would imagine, right? If you're selling ad slots and there might be a commission to that. That's another break-in strategy for everybody. We've alluded to it on this show, but there might be people that maybe they don't want to work at an agency or directly for a brand, but finding a large publication and selling ads via that way, that could be a good career path for some.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just as context, if you look at the timing of when I was doing this, it is the very start of the dot-com bubble, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There was a lot of cash there that people were spending because they were trying to make sure that they were bringing in as many customers as they could and really ramping up their presence. So yeah, it was a great time to be there until it wasn't a great time to be there. Mm-hmm. But I think I really learned the value of understanding where dollars are going and how you're really monetizing your offering.
Gotcha. So getting out of the ad sales side of the world, I see you became a senior account manager. Is this true? Or do we want to skip to American Express?
Yeah. So there's a bit of a transition between those two. Like I mentioned, I didn't want to get typecast as a salesperson. So my thought was, okay, if I do an MBA, go back to business school, I can hopefully make the leap from sales to marketing.
Gotcha.
And so I went, and I was really missing Australia too. So I got back into school, back into Melbourne Business School, went back and did an MBA in marketing. So that allowed me to specialize. And my whole goal out of that was to really get more skills and learning to allow me to make the transition from sales to a marketing role.
Gotcha.
So that happened. And again, life has its own plans. So my thought was, hey, I'm going to get out of here with an MBA and there's going to be brands knocking down my door. I'm just going to walk into a great job straight out of it. And things didn't quite work out that way. So I ended up going to Singapore where my family was living at that point. Again, I'm totally broke. I literally had less than $200 in my pocket. And so there's the only chance to really, make it through that was to move in with my parents in Singapore. And as luck would have it, within 3 weeks of getting there, I was just applying for a few jobs and I got a job at a digital marketing agency in accounts. And so I moved out of home, got into this job, did that for a year, was exposed to a number of tech clients in Singapore. So I worked on HP, worked on Cisco, did a bunch of other projects for tech clients in the industry there. But I also made contacts at American Express that happened to be literally across the road from the offices of this company. And a year later I think what I got was my first real break in advertising and brand marketing by moving into American Express. The person who hired me, Ralph Brunner, is just one of those folks that I learned so much from. He was my boss in terms of how to really consider the value of your brand, the value of your customer, and making sure that you make the right decisions as it relates to spending money, the way the creative is developed and all of that. So yeah, that's when I moved to American Express. This is back in the 2003 timeframe.
So you go and get your MBA to get out of the ad sales. You get your MBA with the vision to be on the marketing side of the industry, a marketing position on the brand side. That doesn't happen quite immediately you get into a marketing agency. So now you're agency side, and then you transition. Did you get poached by Amex? Did you kind of like develop those relationships because you were a client lead?
Yeah, no. So I had no relationship with Amex through my job, but when I was applying for jobs previously, I had interviewed at American Express.
Okay.
And they didn't have anything then. But a year later, they were like, hey, we've got this one role now. Do you want to come
Gotcha.
on board? Yes,
Yeah.
I will.
So always do your very best on every interview, leave a good impression, follow up. Even if you don't get the job, stay friendly, thank them, because you never know what will open up in the near future.
You never know. And the value of staying in touch is amazing. So stay in touch. If you really want to work somewhere, stay in touch with any contact you have there. And that really helped out. So even though it took an entire year, I made my way in there.
And you broke in to a ad analyst position, which is basically like a brand manager-esque position there. You learned a lot. What was like the biggest lesson you learned working at American Express?
Oh my God, so many lessons. I remember in my first week or second week at American Express, our CEO at that time, Ken Chenault, actually came to visit the office in Singapore. And this was a regional office. So it's based in Singapore, but it's managing brand and advertising across the Asia Pacific region. And my boss, Ralph Brunner, snuck me in to one of the sort of town halls that Ken Chenault was hosting. And I remember him saying something that has stuck with me till today. He said, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he said, what we must never forget as marketers is that everything we do should make a deposit in the value of our brand, not a withdrawal from it. And that to me was such an interesting thing, an interesting way to position what marketers do. Because quite often you'll find folks leveraging the brand value that has been created over a number of years and maybe taking some risks with it and maybe taking it down a path it shouldn't go. But what we must always do is, how are we adding to its value constantly? How is every ad we produce, every marketing piece we do, every content we do, really making sure that it's enhancing the value of the brand? And that really stuck with me. And so working on the advertising side, when you're launching multiple campaigns across the region and you're looking at all of this creative, and it's one global brand, but showing up, in regions that are not like each other. Like India is very different than Japan, and Australia is very different than the Philippines. But you have to really make sure that collectively you're adding value to your brand and really showcasing it in the best possible light. So that was something that in the very first couple of weeks I learned. And then obviously just being part of a 2-person team, that's all we were, and managing brand advertising across, 10 markets, you're in it. You're working with agencies. We work very closely with Ogilvy. You're working with the media agencies. We work with Mindshare. These are all big agency partners. You're having constant conversations back with headquarters in New York, and you're part of that global presence as well. It was just an incredible experience. It really was like going back to school for, the 3.5 years that I was there, and got to be part of some amazing campaigns, right? So My Life, My Card. I don't know if people remember that. It was a big global brand campaign featuring a number of very prominent American Express card members, whether it's Robert De Niro, whether it's Kate Winslet, Jose Mourinho. These are all big names now advertising for American Express. And you see the value of associating with folks that are at the top of their game. And it's really important. Yeah.
It sounds like a foreshadow to what you're doing today.
Actually, yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, it really is. I think it's just, again, it's the company you keep. It really is the company you keep. Yeah.
Got it. That makes sense. It all ladders up. Everything builds towards this narrative, your experience, you get better, even in any role that you're in. So I love that. So I see you got back to the States after about a 3.5 year stint at American Express. You get to another iconic brand, and now probably you're feeling good. You're rolling here. You got, you're in what you wanted to be in. What you studied in your MBA for, which you saw those ads growing up and you want to be a part of it. So you're probably feeling really good in your career. You get back to the United States, I believe it's the San Francisco Bay Area, working for Nintendo. Is this correct?
It is, yeah. So I really loved working in Singapore, but my wife and I were ready for a change. And so we decided to make the leap to the US. And I was fortunate enough that at the moment when I was moving to the Bay Area, Nintendo was moving its marketing function from Seattle, where it's headquartered in the Redmond area, to San Francisco Bay Area. So it is just a complete luck. And that's been a feature of my career throughout, is these sort of lucky connections that have managed to happen in terms of timing. And they were looking for someone to lead advertising for this product called the Wii at that point. And I was fortunate enough to interview and get the job. And it was incredible to be a part of the cultural phenomena that the Wii was back then. So I'm sure you've played.
I was a kid. I was a kid during this part. So
yeah.
Please walk me through memory lane and the nostalgia of this, because I'm sure a lot of our listeners in the Gen Z were users of this product.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let me go back like a year or so before I joined Nintendo, and I was back on holiday. I was still working at American Express, but I was back in Australia for a holiday. And I went to the local shopping mall, and they had this little setup from Nintendo. And I was like, obviously, having worked at IGN in the gaming industry, big fan of Nintendo, big fan of consoles. But I knew that Nintendo had struggled with the Xbox and PlayStation taking so much of the market share. And so they had set up a little activation booth where they were showcasing the Wii. And the first time I held that Wii remote in my hand and played Wii tennis, it was like a light bulb went off. I'm like, they've cracked it. They have cracked it, because there's nothing that can get, again, going back to emotion and feeling and making sure you understand your marketing to humans. There's nothing more organic and authentic than you making emotion and seeing it reflected on the screen versus just button mashing, right?
It's incredible.
And again, I had no idea that a year later I would actually be working there, but it was in my mind, wow, they have cracked it, and hopefully this works out. So fast forward 12 months, I'm in San Francisco, I'm working for Nintendo. And it was just an incredible time to be there, because obviously the product was sold out, but we still had to continuously invest in all the games that we were launching and making sure that people were aware of, all the different features that came with the Wii and the titles that were coming out. So we did a lot of advertising, and it was just a great learning experience for me as well, to work for a brand that, while we were working out of America, is a Japanese brand. So very different cultural perspective, and understanding that just again added it to my experience and my ability to work across cultures. Gotcha.
And I want to be cognizant of time, because we have to get to Starbucks, because my co-founder is the biggest fan of Starbucks of all time. But I see after Nintendo, you went back to agency life, being in San Francisco area. This makes sense that you got a job at Goodby Silverstein and Partners, which is the agency in San Francisco, I believe. What made you want to hop over there?
Yeah, good question. So I think, having worked in advertising at Amex and at Nintendo, I felt like I really needed to expand my skill set. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to make sure that I could work on different brands, but also understand how brands made bigger marketing decisions. And so the opportunity came about to move to Goodby Silverstein, and I worked on a number of tech clients there. So I worked on HP to begin with, worked on Spread. Actually also did a stint at Adobe, where I made some connections, which helped me longer term. And what I learned at Goodby was, just how brands make these broader marketing and advertising decisions linked to the strategy that the company is driving. So it's not just in isolation making an advertising decision, in isolation making a marketing investment. It's really linking to the broader business strategy. And that was a huge eye opener for me, and has served me well. Also got to work very closely with Rich Silverstein, just an incredible legend of the industry, and just to hear him up close and personal was just a huge learning experience.
Yeah. How was that transition though? I think being all in and on one brand on the brand side, to being immersed in multiple brands and the crazy pace that is advertising agency landscape. Was that a shock for you? Was that,
It was.
How'd you handle that?
It was definitely a shock, and just in full candidness, not one that I particularly enjoyed as much as I thought I would, frankly.
That's fair.
I'm a father halfway through it. And so,
oh, geez. I would not advise.
Exactly. So the demands of being on the agency side where it's a 24/7 role, right? You're constantly on the go and you're reacting to it. And your job in many cases is at the whim of the clients, right?
You're
So
at
the clients
service. Yeah.
you're a service, right? So, that was definitely difficult. And once I became a father and had a family, I decided like, it's time for me to go back to the brand side where there's this little bit more, consistency to the routine. It's not easier, but there's definitely a bit more of a consistency. And that's when I started looking around for their opportunities and then Starbucks came along.
Gotcha. And how did Starbucks come around?
Well, I had a former colleague of mine from Nintendo who was at Starbucks. I saw the role advertised on the Starbucks website. I was on vacation and I gave her a ring and I said, "Hey, I'm going to send you my resume if you can make some connections." And one thing led to another. And there I was interviewing in Seattle. I never thought I'd go back to Seattle after the initial
Right.
stint that I had there. But I mean, how could you not want to work at Starbucks? It is one of the most iconic brands in the world. It believes in brand marketing. And so when the opportunity came about, we're like, yep, let's do it. And my family and I moved up to Seattle.
Incredible. Big lessons from working at Starbucks. What did you learn?
I think the biggest lesson I learned was the value of investing in the brand. And let me explain a little bit more about what I mean by that. If you think about Starbucks, it's got a massive global footprint, right? Everyone knows it. But Starbucks is not about the coffee you drink. It's not about the muffins you might eat. It's about the experience and the emotions and the memories you make in the location. And this whole notion of the third place, a place between home and work where you can create an emotional connection with yourself, with your community, with your barista, that's incredible, right? The value in that is fundamentally so strong that regardless of the pace of the business, whenever you walk into a Starbucks, it happens to me, memories of every single Starbucks I've ever been to like come flooding back, right? So, and that connection is so valuable. That's the biggest thing I learned by working there. Got to work on some incredible campaigns, but launching Starbucks' first ever global brand campaign, Meet Me at Starbucks, was definitely a highlight.
How did that come about?
Well, I think leadership believed that we needed to invest in the brand, and Howard Schultz on downwards, right? Everyone was like very much focused on investing in the brand, and we just needed an insight. And our agency 72 and Sunny came up with this insight that, hey, it's actually part of humans saying like, hey, meet me at Starbucks. People say that. People actually say that.
Yeah.
So why don't we authentically capture what that actually means around the world? So we created a 24-hour window of time where we went to 29 cities in 23 countries and shot 220 hours of content inside Starbucks stores. And that became the campaign. So it was on YouTube. We had lots of digital films. We ran it on TV, and we were actually just turning the camera towards the authentic interactions happening in the Starbucks stores around the world to show that as different as we are, there's so much commonality in the way we experience the brand. And that ran for well over a year.
What was the biggest challenge in producing this? Any setbacks or any internal questions on this thing?
I mean, obviously, whenever you're doing an investment of this level, you have to make sure everyone internally is bought in. And so it took time to make sure everyone was tracking, the business felt comfortable, that the marketing team was set up for it. And then obviously just making sure we had the right partners to do this at that scale, right? When you're shooting in 23 different countries on one single day, we had a war room set up in LA, that stayed up for 24 hours because you're moving with the time zones, right? You start off in like Japan and then you go across Asia, you enter Europe and you end up in Hawaii. That's the last place that we shot. And it was just incredible to see that level of logistical excellence just come together. But it didn't happen all at once. We had to really make sure we had the right partners across the globe to do that.
Gotcha. And did you find that balance? I feel like, it's an important question. I think we all wonder from those that work on the agency side. Did you happen to find that balance you were looking for? Leaving Goodby, having your child. Did you find yourself more fulfilled or relieved of extra work capacities, or was it as demanding?
It was demanding, but I did feel, I think, honestly, I did feel more fulfilled. And one of the reasons why I did was I felt more in control of the way things were going from ideation to execution than I did on the agency side, where you are a cog in the wheel, right? If you're an account person, for example, you're not seeing all the strategy that's being developed on the client side. And so I think that gave me a level of comfort that the end product, the end result was something a little bit more in my control than it would have been had I stayed on the agency side.
Interesting. So maybe were you working the same amount of hours? Probably, maybe a little bit more or less in one, same amount of hours, but you just feel like it's a different emotional feel and this interaction with the work. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's hard work. It is hard work because it's, it's a big brand. There's a lot of campaigns launching simultaneously. There are business pressures. So you're working hard hours, but that emotional ability to sort of compartmentalize the end result from the process, I think is better on the brand side for me personally than it was
Yes, of course.
on the agency side. Now, there are folks who are amazing folks at agencies and that's what they do and love, and they love the chaos, and that's amazing. For me, it was more about the ability to manage it a little bit better.
Yeah, I feel like what are the trade-offs, right? So what are the pros and cons of working agency side and then compared it to what are the pros and cons for the brand side? So for agency side, you get all this various experience. You're more so of a cog in the machine. But I feel like what might be stressful on the client side is you own it. This is your campaign. You're seeing it from start to finish, and it better perform whatever the KPIs are. Because if not, it's on you. So there's a little bit more pressure there. But on the agency side, just one campaign. There's a bunch of other people working on it. So kind of give me your thoughts because you've done this. I'm just analyzing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I've seen a lot of people come in from the agency side to brands I was working at and leave very quickly because they didn't like the pace of decision making being so slow. They didn't like the fact that you had to rely on so many internal stakeholders to even get funding or even get to an ad campaign. For me, I love that process. I love just understanding the strategy behind the ask. I love working with the internal teams to develop a brief that really is actionable and that'll spark some incredible creativity. But I think that there's a lot of people who are amazing at agencies because they're able to get things done very quickly. They're able to go from an ask to action very quickly, and they're able to get things developed out in the market as fast as possible. And also, a lot of those people bring the value and experience of having worked on many brands at the same time, so they can take learnings from one sector to another. So I don't think there's any positive or negative. It just depends on your own personality and what you're willing to sacrifice or take on as part of your day-to-day role.
And what advice would you have for the current agency professionals that, to better, or what do you wish they knew about your position either today or speaking on behalf of the brand marketer? How can we make their lives easier? Give us some advice for the agency professional.
So I'll say two things. One is understand the broadness of the ask, because sometimes the ask is not for an ad. The ask is to move the business forward. The ask is to change perception in a certain way. The ask is to help improve where the business or the product or the service currently is. I think sometimes we can get very caught up on, I need to develop a campaign to address this little thing in this little amount of time. But really understanding where it's coming from, what's driving it, and what could appear next is really, really important when you're on the agency side. The other thing I would say is getting a broad range of experience across different sectors, different industries, which is something that is very much possible on the agency side. Take advantage of that. If you're able to move from client to client and really expand your skill set, you will start to look around corners a lot faster. And that'll help you in your job. So I would really advise folks to take on another account, take on something that's totally different than what you've done in the past, because, hey, being on the agency actually gives you an incredible opportunity to do that.
Right. Understood. Thank you. And then final advice for the aspiring marketer, not agency side. if somebody wants to be a brand marketer, do you recommend going to like getting your MBA, or do you recommend them starting agency side? How can the aspiring marketer break into a brand marketer position at a large brand?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the first thing I'll say is brand marketers, the fundamental thing you've got to remember is that you're speaking with humans. You're marketing to humans. Don't forget the emotion piece. And quite a lot of times you see briefs or strategies that are so focused on the features, the business goals, the business needs. They forget what do you want people to feel when you see this piece of marketing. So I would love for brand marketers to just remember that. And I'll paraphrase the advice that I heard well back in the day, that do things that add value to your brand. Don't take advantage of the brand's value, like add more value to it. And then in terms of like what experiences you should look for, I would say the same thing that I would say to someone at an agency. Get a broad range of experience. Now, I got it by luck more than by design. But if you look at, American Express, Nintendo, Starbucks, Adobe, they're 4 very different brands. They're all amazing, iconic global brands, but they work in very different industries. They operate very differently. They have different histories. But that sort of wealth and the breadth of experience has really helped me in every single day today, because I had those data points to refer back to. I've been through those experiences, and that's something that I would urge people to do as well.
I love it. Well, Amit, that's all I got. How can people reach out to you?
Reach out through LinkedIn. They can hopefully put the link in the chat. And I think for sure, I'm more than happy to always connect. I feel, and I think I mentioned this to you, Gina, before we started recording, I feel a tremendous sense of gratitude to all the shoulders that I stood on. Obviously, I got here because of a lot of people believing in me and giving me opportunities. And I just want to give back. So if there's anything I can give, I'm more than happy to do so.
I love that. Well, this is a perfect platform. Like I said, and we appreciate you coming on, sharing your story, your advice. I'm excited to get this one out, and have a great rest of your day and all the best success. I wish you all the success with Adobe and the future. I know you guys will rock it. I'm excited to see some of these brand partnerships come to play.
Thanks, Gino. Appreciate the time.
Of course.